Good evening, Americans, and welcome to The Ed Show tonight from New York. These stories are hitting my hot buttons at this hour. Americans are paying less taxes than at any time since the 50s. Does it feel that way? Well, it is a fact. But President Obama is still under attack for being a tax and spend liberal and for redistributing the wealth in America. My commentary on that coming up. This is the story that has me fired up tonight. We lead it off just reminding you, don't ever let any Republican lie to you about President Obama. He is not a tax and spend liberal. Income tax payments are at a 60-year low, and conservatives won't give President Obama an ounce of credit, any credit at all. See, they want to defeat him. The Republicans have created a tax narrative around this president right from the beginning.
He's hiding his real agenda of redistributing your hard-earned money.
The American people are asking the question, where are the jobs? They're not raising their hand and asking the question, can I pay higher taxes?
I think it is outrageous to suggest that raising taxes in the middle of a recession is a good idea.
Raising taxes on the people who create jobs kills jobs, and the American people know it, even if the president doesn't.
He really believes that it's his job to return the nation's wealth to its rightful, quote-unquote, rightful owners. And that means that he believes the people who have wealth have stolen it. From those who have no wealth, it's been unfairly achieved and accrued, and it's his job to take it and redistribute it.
So, do you think they're all on the same page? Let's see. I started out saying that tax payments are at a 60-year low in this country. It's the age of sacrifice, and we just don't want to make any sacrifices. What those folks were saying right there, nothing could be further from the truth. Conservatives, listen very closely. For the third year in a row, Americans will be paying less in taxes. 2010 federal revenues were 14% smaller than in 2008. Individual income tax revenues were 27% less in 2010 than in 2001, the first year of the Bush administration. Now, individual income taxes as a percentage GDP have dropped from 9.7% in 2001 to 6.2% in 2010. Folks, that's a 36% drop. Numbers haven't been that low since World War II. Now, to be fair, many of those numbers really are low due to the economy and the recovery and the record job losses that we've seen in this country. But President Obama has also made a habit out of cutting taxes, just what they've wanted all along. The president passed a making work pay tax cut. He extended the Bush tax cuts for 2 years, and he passed a 2% payroll tax holiday on Social Security. None of that matters to these guys over on the right. Like Bill O'Reilly, he asked the president about redistributing the wealth during the Super Bowl interview.
Do you deny their assessment? Do you deny that you're a man who wants to redistribute wealth?
Absolutely.
You deny that?
Absolutely. Bill, I didn't raise taxes once. I lowered taxes over the last 2 years.
Hey, he didn't get interrupted there when he said he lowered taxes over the past 2 years. And just a reminder that tax payments are at a 60-year low. I don't want to forget that. The president, well, actually, he was a little bit off base there. He has raised taxes on cigarettes and indoor tanning. But, of course, unless you're John Boehner, you really don't have anything to worry about, so don't complain. President Obama hasn't taken from the rich and given to the poor. He's provided tax cuts for the super rich and the working poor. And we're going to pay a price down the road if we don't buckle up and get to the bar and pay the bill. Republican presidents, they are the real villains when it comes to wealth redistribution in this country. During the Bush years, listen to this, the top 5% got 52% of the tax breaks in this country. The bottom 20%, how did they do? Well, they only got 8% of the benefits. See, Bush couldn't hold a candle to the highway robber of the poor back in the 1980s. Back in the years when Ronald Reagan was president, income of the top 1/10 of 1% grew over 105%. The bottom 90% only had a 1.2% increase. Now, you tell me what the mission's been since the Reagan years. That means that the super rich income grew 100% faster than the rest of America. And you want to know what the hell's happening to the middle class? There are the numbers. Trickle-down economics was an absolute complete failure, and it still is today. The Bush tax cuts left us with the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, and President Obama is trying to clean up this mess that was 30 years in the making. And we as Americans are sitting here saying, gosh, it doesn't feel like the taxes are as low as they've been since the 1950s. The Republicans undoubtedly have zero credibility on taxes, but they've convinced enough sheep to follow and keep following them right off the financial cliff over and over again. Democrats need to reject any economic cuts John Boehner and Mitch McConnell put on the table. The Republicans' #1 goal is basically to systematically undercut the New Deal right in front of our eyes. And if they get their way, it'll be a full-scale attack on middle classers, wage earners, veterans, seniors, the working poor. The middle class was forced to put the Bush tax cuts, the Medicare prescription drug bill, and a couple of wars, stick it on the credit card. Play with it on the plastic. Let the next folks worry about it. President Obama needs to level the playing field and ask the rich in this country to do some economic patriotism. Yes, I think the Democrats need to take these numbers and go right back to the table and start asking Americans if they want to sacrifice. You notice how no one, and we're going to do this story in the coming days, no one ever does a story in the media. No one does a graph out there of just exactly how would our finances be in this country if we were to go back to the old rates. How long would it take us to get our fiscal house in order? I mean, obviously, the Treasury needs more money if we're going to function. But you see, the goal for the righties is to starve the beast. Now, I know all of you just feel so good and warm inside tonight knowing that your taxes are as low as they've been since the 1950s. But ask yourself this about trickle-down economics. The feds don't fork out the money to the states, so ask yourself, how's that property tax thing working out for you as of late? Any sales tax has been hitting you? How about transportation costs? How about education costs? Don't tell me that your health care bill hasn't gone up since last year. It has. You see, when we all finish our schooling or get into the workforce, there's this big funnel. And all these employees and workers go into this funnel. And it only gets better for a few Americans as we go on in our careers. And that funnel just gets a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller. And the people that get down here, they can afford it. But you see, the folks up here, they still have the same expenses as the folks here. And the taxation is totally different. So this funnel changes as years go on. And whereas some people excel in their careers, they get lucky, they're at the right place at the right time, others are going this way because of outsourcing, because of taxation, because it's not fair. All the breaks go to the top 2%. And now we've got this thing known as greed. And the president indirectly addressed it with the Chamber of Commerce just yesterday when he actually had to ask business people to do the patriotic thing in America. Will you hire somebody? You got $1.8 trillion sitting over there. We have businesses in this country who have flourished. They've flourished because they've decided to put the work overseas, and they really have no regard for those who are falling out of the funnel. So we need to ask ourselves as Democrats, as liberals, and I'm a professed liberal, are we willing to talk to our kids about sacrifice? Because we haven't sacrificed anything for the last decade. It's been take, take, take. You know, we almost operate as if we really don't think there's going to be a tomorrow, that we don't even worry about the next generation. And those sound bites that I played for you, this is where these people are. And all of those people that I played in that sound bite tonight for you, that montage, what do they have in common? They're wealthy. They're wealthy, and they have the microphone, and they are wealthy, and they have the visibility, and they can tell their story. But the working stiffs of America, the middle classers, where's your microphone to say you're getting screwed? Where's your microphone to talk about, hey, these property taxes are going through the roof because we didn't get the federal money to help our No Child Left Behind? So the president has the weight of the world, and he has a bunch of hate merchants surrounding him who want to see him fail. I commend the president for going to the Chamber of Commerce and telling it like it is. Some others will disagree with me later in this broadcast tonight. And we're also going to show you a segment later tonight about how people in the middle of the country think. That they just believe that the president is still and always has been a Muslim. It's amazing. It's amazing what you tell someone and then they believe it. And then they go off in outer space and they just cannot change their thinking. Well, that's where we are with our finances. No one's having the tough conversation with America right now about where we are with the finances and what we have to do to fix it. And what they want to do is they want to go after seniors, they want to go after veterans, they want to go after public education, they want to take down this health care bill. These select few that have the money, these select few that have the microphone, these select few that can be media stars, they're really not telling the truth about the middle classers. And notice how the Republicans never use the term middle class. They're great at the two-word culture, but they never talk about the middle class. We need some real leadership in this country, and I think we all can come to the conclusion that President Obama can't do it all. You know what we're going to have in the next 2 years in government in this country? More obstruction. More obstruction. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think tonight. Tonight's text question is, should President Obama and Congress raise taxes to balance the budget? Text A for yes, text B for no to 622-639. We'll bring you the results later on in the show. Joining me now is Pulitzer Prize winning journalist David K. Johnson. He's the author of Free Lunch, How the Wealthiest Americans Enrich Themselves at Government Expense and Stick You with the Bill. And he's a professor at Syracuse University College of Law. Great to have you with us tonight, Professor. How do we turn this?
Thank you for having me.
You bet. How do we turn this around? How does America turn this around?
Well, number one, I think people need to recognize that the Republicans have created a system that is redistributing income and wealth upward. That growth rate you talked about during the Reagan era wasn't 100% more for the people at the top. The growth rate was 100 times more, 105% versus 1.2%. And since 1980, all of the income growth has been going to the top. At the same time, in December, remember, the Republicans raised taxes on everybody in America who has a job, who makes $20,000 or less if they're single, $40,000 if they're married. None of the news reports talk about this. The Republicans keep saying they cut taxes. No, they cut taxes on the well-to-do. They raise taxes on people who make, whether they're single or married, under $20,000 or $40,000 because they killed President Obama's Making Work Pay tax credit.
But he's a tax and spend liberal, isn't he? That's the narrative that's out there.
Well, you know, his budget deficit was, his first one was smaller than George Bush's last one, and he was on a path to have smaller and smaller budget deficits going forward. The reason the budget deficits are so big is we're still living in the era of spend and borrow republicanism. Remember, Ronald Reagan promised 30 years ago that if you elected him, he was going to balance the budget within 3 years. And instead, he ran up record deficits. And this has continued. This is clearly a fundamental tenet of the Republicans. And people need to start learning this kind of information so that they can counter what are just flat-out lies, particularly the claim by Republicans that they aren't raising taxes on anybody. They raise taxes on the working poor.
And isn't much of our economy run on how people feel? It's hard for the president to make the country feel good and feel confident when there's this constant narrative that's out there that, well, he doesn't understand business and there's uncertainty out there. He can put the cat's meow on the table when it comes to tax packages, and it won't mean anything because he's fighting a narrative that is almost an insurmountable sound chamber that can't be challenged. The sound clips that I played earlier. So until we feel a little better, can we expect the economy to turn around the way we really want it to?
Well, it's not more than feeling to turn the economy around. So long as we have these systems that concentrate income and wealth at the top, we can't have the economic growth that we need to have. Yeah. And people need to recognize things like the fact that President Obama is not taking on these issues. He keeps accommodating. He keeps making deals. He said he would never raise taxes on people who make under $200,000 if they're single, $250,000 if they're married. And then he signed this bill in December that raise taxes on the working poor. And until we get a policy that's aimed on American jobs, on keeping jobs here, on not helping companies move their capital out of the country so that basically they can go after labor that's well paid and replace it with very minimally paid labor in China and Vietnam, we're going to continue to have this same problem.
David K. Johnston, always a pleasure. Great to have your insight tonight on The Ed Show. Thanks so much.